Hagen, and I work with the University of Oregon Alumni Association, along with my colleague, Susan Ordonez, who is the Associate Director of Early Engagement. So today our three alumni panelists are going to answer some questions about life after graduation and why they've chosen to stay connected to the UO and to other alumni. So I'm just going to get started by briefly introducing our panelists. I'm going to let them say a little bit more about themselves. Then we'll jump into some questions that we've prepared, and then we'll open up the floor up to anyone else who has questions. So when you have questions, please submit them using the Zoom chat function. Feel free to submit them anytime throughout the event, either to the whole group or specifically to Susan Ordonez. So let's get started. I'm first going to ask all of our panelists if you can unmute your video so everyone can see you, and then we'll get started with introductions. Wonderful. So very quickly, we've got Ellie Burr, who's joining us from Portland today. Oliver Schweitzer is joining us from New York City, and Anetra Brown is joining us from the Bay Area. So in that order, Ellie, we'll get started with you.
Cool. Hi, I'm Ellie. I graduated in 2013. I majored in biology and I minored in chemistry and art history. I'm from Gresham, but now I live in inner Northeast Portland. Currently, I'm a clinic coordinator for a psychology clinic in Portland, and I'm also getting my MBA right now. And currently I'm involved with the U of O as I'm the president of the Portland chapter, also known as the PDX Ducks.
Am I next? Oh, Erin, you're muted.
All right, sorry, event bingo, someone's winning. How about we just go in the order of everybody on the screen there.
Yeah, hey everybody. First and foremost, congratulations on this exciting chapter you're about to embark on, and look forward to speaking with you over the next hour, and by all means, offline as our contact information will be made available. By way of introduction, my name is Oliver Schweitzer. I'm a Eugene native. Graduated from the University of Oregon in 2007 with a degree in political science and a minor in Spanish. I work for a Japanese bank here in Manhattan, and kind of broadly described as global financial crimes compliance. And here in New York City, I'm the vice president of the New York Ducks. I will pass it over to you, Anetra.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say. I'm Anetra Brown, a 2015 grad from U of O. I currently live in the Bay Area, and I'm actually originally from the Bay, so I moved back to the Bay Area in 2018, so it's good to be home now. Currently, I'm working at Lyft, where I support our inclusion and diversity programs.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So this next question is also for everyone, and we can go ahead in the same order that we did for the last one. So tell us a little bit about how you went about your job search after graduation. When you were looking for a job, did you have a location in mind, or were you open to finding a job anywhere?
Okay, I'll go first. So when I graduated college, I was still planning on going into medicine. And so one of the primary things is that I was looking for jobs in the healthcare realm. And I moved back to Gresham. I moved back in with my parents for a while. I personally don't like driving and commuting long distances, so I tried really hard to find something that was like in Gresham, Troutdale. Obviously, I think flexibility is really important. So if there had been a job that had been a little farther out, I would have taken it, kind of get what you can, especially in the job market. But I applied to over 50 jobs. So before I even got offers for 2. I did a lot of research on my own, but I also actually used the Duck Career Network a bunch and got help that way when I was looking for stuff. It's just a really valuable resource that everybody gets and can tap into, which is great. And I would say that one of the main things that I was focused on was having a really good resume, because people don't get to meet you when you're applying for a job. They just get to look at this piece of paper. And so that was one of my big things was having people look at that a lot. So yeah, so I just applied a bunch, which is just something you're going to have to do. I ended up getting a job that was pretty close into Portland, but yeah, I was kind of up for whatever. Like I said, it's hard not to be flexible in a case where you don't know where you might get hired. So.
All right, I will take it from there. Thanks, Ellie. Well, I was absolutely dead set. I was on a warpath of I was going to go to law school. I knew that's what I wanted to do. Nobody was going to tell me anything different. I was in the political science pre-law tract. Probably annoyed my academic advisor by meeting probably twice a quarter to make sure I was on track. Took the LSAT twice. And then had kind of the cold, harsh reality of maybe the financial impact of like how much law school costs. In terms of the actual kind of the geography side of the question, I think I found myself maybe winter quarter, spring quarter, my senior year in 2007, trying to leverage my, my network, which let's be honest, it was my family's network and kind of friends of friends. They're in Eugene, they're in Portland, and even some in the Bay Area and Seattle, and hit some roadblocks. And similar to Ellie, I applied for, 50 might be a conservative number. I know I applied for a lot of different jobs, and I eventually turned my attention to Washington, D.C. Now, why Washington, D.C.? I had met a professor during a weekend seminar, I think it was my winter quarter of 2007, where he was traveling the United States, and it was about human trafficking. And I knew nothing about human trafficking, but I found the course very interesting, and him and I kept in contact, and he was telling me about some NGOs, so these non-government organizations in DC. And, I thought law school, there's a lot of different law schools out there, maybe move to Virginia, gain residency in Virginia. So long story short is I ended up moving to the Washington, DC metro area, and kind of, again, had the cold reality of the NGO. I was able to network and attended a couple of their happy hours, but they wanted me to volunteer for a year before getting paid. So I couldn't make that work. I applied to a couple places on the Hill, and again, some kind of a cold reality of the pay was not, I was not able to make that work living in Washington, D.C. metro. So I actually ended up getting a job at a brick and mortar branch of a bank. That wasn't my second option. That was not my third or fourth option, but it was something in the short term. And in a few minutes, I know the three of us are going to speak a little bit more of how we kind of found our career and found our way. But before I pass it off to Anetra, I guess what I want to share is I was playing the long game. I knew that's not what I wanted to do forever, but financially it worked. And I was able to begin to kind of build my network there in the DC area. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. My story was a little different. So I remember being in my winter term of my senior year and having this reality of like, oh shit, like I need to figure out what I'm gonna do after school. Moving back to my mom's house was not an option. And so I needed to just kind of figure out what was gonna happen next. And I started I also just wasn't sure. So I had a couple of major changes. I knew that I was interested in like the nonprofit sector or just helping people, social services, but I wasn't exactly sure. And so that term I actually took a fundraising class, and my professor, she was an adjunct professor who was also working at United Way at the time. And so through her class, I actually learned more about fundraising and nonprofits in United Way. And as I was ending winter term, there was a position that they were hiring for, an entry-level position. And so I went to her, actually applied for it, and I didn't get it. But I went to her and I asked like, hey, like, I saw this role, I was really interested in it, but I didn't get it. Is this not something that I should be looking for? Am I underqualified for this? And I just asked her for guidance and pretty like candid feedback, since she had been my professor for a little bit. And she was like, no, actually for that particular position, they went a different direction, and she explained it. But then she let me know that they just received a grant from the state, and that they were hiring for a similar role that she thought I would be a great fit for. So she encouraged me to apply again. And so I actually applied for the second position and I got it. I mean, of course, through interviews and, a month or so later, I ended up getting the position. So I know my story is pretty unique in that I guess the 2 jobs I applied for, of that I ended up landing. I know that's not always the case, but I do feel like some of that may have been due to the networking that I was doing at that time, and just kind of focusing in on that specific role, which is one of many strategies that I've seen work in my career as well as with others that I've connected with. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome. Thanks, Anetra.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this next question is one for everyone as well. How did you establish yourself as a professional, whether you were moving to a new city after graduation or returning to your hometown?
Okay, I will start. So it is very, very weird going from college to a full-time job and kind of navigating what that means. I worked in school, like during college at the duck store, super chill and laid back. So like, it was just a really fun environment, which not that work isn't fun, but sometimes it gets a little bit different when you're in a full-time position. And so there's just like a lot of changes that you deal with in order to really feel and adjust to professional life. And I had a really good support system when I moved back home. And so I had a lot of friends come back and family and just support from, like I said, I actually did use the Duck Career Network as well. So I was fortunate enough to kind of have those tools, which I used in order to like practice like interviewing skills and little things like that. Just because I hadn't really had like that major big job ever before. My best advice to you is just like learn as much as you can, really try and strengthen the network that you have around you, and just be open to new experiences, because that's how you're going to grow. Especially I did jobs, like my first job out of college was working as a medication aide at a dementia home, which is not something I saw myself doing, but I grew so much with that opportunity. And just like how you interact with people who are older than you, if you're the youngest one working in an environment, and kind of navigating that, and putting yourself in situations that allow you to experience new things, really allows you to have like confidence in how you can accomplish yourself as well.
Thanks, Ellie. So at the risk of sounding like your parents, first and foremost, establishing a routine. And I think to echo Ellie, the cadence that we find as a student is so much different. And maybe I'm sounding like Captain Obvious here. Anetra being there in the fast pace of San Francisco, it's very similar here in New York City. There are rhythms and there are paces to careers that you can find yourself in, that you really have to take care of yourself. And again, not to sound like your parents here, or my mom still tells me this, I'm 37, work out, eat right. And I transitioned that comment to your actual career path. And again, we're using this word network. All 3 of us have used this a couple times, beginning to cultivate relationships. So that first job you have when you leave Eugene likely will not be your last, but begin to cultivate those relationships very, very early on. So the last job that I had that I actually cold applied for was when I left Eugene. Every other single job I've had since has been through an internal referral, or a former employee at that firm referred me. And I have worked for some large Fortune 100 companies. So I have spent a couple years at Deloitte, traveling the country and traveling the world for global financial grants projects. I've worked at Ernst & Young, I've worked at HSBC. The comment I really, this question says, after graduation, how do you establish yourself as a professional? 2 things before I pass it off. Never get outworked. I only have my paper degree from the University of Oregon. I don't have a law degree. I don't have an MBA. Being here in the New York City metropolitan area is quite competitive. But I have been able to kind of rise through my career by working my tail off and establishing that network. And again, there are things called soft skills and also hard technical competencies. And a lot of people have those technical competencies. I think it was either Anetra or Ellie mentioned about the resume and making sure your resume is buttoned up. Well, when you do get that interview, and they're looking at your resume, they might look at, you know, a University of Washington grad or a USC grad or fill in the blank, and you all three have the same technical competencies, but it's really developing those soft skills. You know, and it's so much more than just cultivating relationship and networking. It's, you know, can you take all of your experiences and boil that down into a few action points of why you add value for maybe that small firm or maybe that medium or large size transnational organization. So I guess that that has been my experience. Don't get outworked. Be nice. Come to work every day with a consistent attitude. Take care of myself. Yeah, I'll step off my soapbox. I'll hand it over to Anetra.
Oh, that's so true, though. All those points are crucial. Just to add to that, I mean, I would echo both what they said. I think, in addition, what this question made me think about is the fact that, like, I'm still establishing myself, and so I don't feel that I've arrived as a professional just yet. I mean, I think that I'm developing my career, and that's a process that or a journey I'll be going on, you know, for the next several years. I think that, so when I landed the job at United Way, I was still in Eugene. And so at that point, I had done a little bit of volunteering here and there and started to establish myself in the Eugene, Springfield, Lane County community. When I moved back out to the Bay Area in 2018, I had to start over. I actually had never lived in the Bay Area as an adult. And so most of the people who knew me as a kid and did not know anything about the work that I was doing. And I'm still trying to build myself and build my network out here and, you know, connect with folks and kind of establish myself as a professional. And so I would say just know that through each transition in your life, as you start a new career or you move to a new place, it requires you to have to kind of reset and reestablish yourself and who you want to be as a professional, and that's okay. So know that you don't have to have it all figured out and that you never fully arrive, but that it's, you know, it's an iterative process. The other thing I would add is that I think the difference between my college self and my post-college self or my professional self was just my work quality. And so I realized pretty quickly that in college, you get this like playground to make mistakes. And really that's the point in your life where you're allowed to make mistakes and get feedback and correct your mistakes. And so as a professional, you do have some wiggle room to try new things and get feedback. But a lot of times when you're showing up to your job, you get to the point where you become viewed as an expert or someone that has these specific skills that they hired for to do a specific job. And so before, where I maybe spent kind of like long hours doing extra studying, cramming, trying to just basically master a topic or a skill set, now I'm actually perfecting those skills, those specific skills. And so I would say that the benefit in that is that, you know, now you work a particular amount of time being as, you know, lending your expertise, giving your experience, and then you hop off the clock. Whereas in college, it was more of a stretched out process where you're studying and, you know, allowed to make mistakes. And so I think that was a transition that I had a hard time with, and realizing that, like, oh, I'm working from 9 to 5. There's no homework, you know, there's no extra studying, but that, you know, if I work really hard, I focus, I do my tasks, and I kind of map things out, that I'm able to kind of hop offline at 5. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, but for the most part, that's the idea. And I think that's the difference between being a professional and establishing yourself as a professional in your craft versus being a student.
So this next one's for you, Ellie. So the Portland Ducks are one of the most active regional alumni chapters in a city with the largest UO alumni population in the country. So tell us, how did you become the leader of this group?
Okay, so I graduated in 2013, and I really want to stay involved with the duck community because I feel like U of O gave me a lot, and it really created a sense of belonging, and I wanted to ensure that I surrounded myself with something that was a significant part of my life growing up, because I mean, there for 4 years, but I feel like the amount of growth that occurred for me personally was huge, and I just really enjoyed being there. And when I graduated, my graduation gift was from my parents was a membership, a lifetime membership. And so it was because of that that I found out about like the Portland chapter. And then I found out about all the events that were happening in Portland. And so when I moved back home, I attended, like after I got settled, probably like August or September, I attended one of their first events, or one of my first events with them, which was Science Night. We used to have it at Widmer Brewery, and all the beer was donated, and there was this really cool room that we'd have the event in, and a professor from Eugene would come up and do a lecture kind of on their research. So it was a really cool experience, and I met so many people. There was like 120 people. It was like a packed event. It was just really awesome and informative. And then I got to meet so many cool people. And so I was like, okay, well, this is really neat. I would like to stay involved. And so I started going to other stuff. And I was just really impressed with how much the chapter did, because we do watch parties, we do happy hours, tons of networking events. And, you know, we're just connecting to the community, which I really wanted to be a part of. So then starting in 2014, I took over as the chair for Science Nights. And so then I started organizing that for a few years. And then I took over volunteer chair probably in like 2016 or 2017. And then I got voted in as the president for this year, which goes through until 2022. So that's kind of how long process. I've been involved for a while, but it's just the chapter does a lot of really cool things, and it's a really neat thing to get to be a part of.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
So Oliver, this one's for you. So you said you were first involved with the DC Ducks, and they are another very large and active group of alumni all the way on the other side of the country. So why did you get involved with the DC Ducks? And then when you moved to New York City, why did you also decide to become involved with the New York Ducks?
Yeah, no, great question. You know, when I moved here, and it quite literally was like 10 days, I packed up my rickety old Acura and drove from Eugene, Oregon to Washington, D.C. Found myself not really knowing a lot of people, and kind of intuitively thought, well, let's see if there's some Ducks in the area. And truthfully, I kind of went to, there was a, you know, before the football season started, scoured online and found some contact information, and they had an event, kind of a pre-football watch season event, and I expected to see, you know, 3 or 4 people, and it would be fun. And, you know, that was it. And what I found was, I think there's, 50, 60, 75. There's a lot of people at this pre-football game watch party in August of 2007. And it kind of took off from there. I made some really good friends, and it really, you know, the University of Oregon is a really special place, and those relationships aren't just kind of organically grown as we go from the dorms to the progressing sophomore, junior, senior, and graduating. It goes to after the fact. And it was, I actually bumped into 2 different people that fall of 2007 that we were acquaintances. We knew each other, but certainly weren't friends, and kind of bumped into each other at various events. And they had moved to Washington, D.C. for different reasons. And, you know, I found that I wanted to give back, and I felt like serving on the board is a great opportunity. The Washington, D.C. Ducks, as well as here in New York City, do a lot. It is so much more than just having football watch parties. It's so much more than athletic event, which is an important piece. But both chapters are very much involved with the community. And, you know, so I left DC and I was a board member, and now here in New York City, joined the board, and then, you know, currently serve as the vice president of the chapter. We, and Aaron, as you have joined us, there's a soup kitchen in Chelsea in the West Village that we've been with for years. So there's a lot of different volunteer opportunities. And I think as I kind of close this question, you know, these are 2 unique geographies where, you know, very ambitious graduates, and not everyone is coming straight after undergrad. You know, we do get people who move at different points of their life, are, you know, seeking a home away from home. And it really has become that for me, and I know for a lot of other Ducks. And I'm going to really cheap plug for New York City. We have a lot of 2019, 18, and 17 grads, and I know in this particular last season, we're really excited to kind of cultivate those relationships with the newer grads, where it does become a home away from home. And then the last thing I'll say is professionally, similar to Ellie's comments, kind of echoing, There are a lot of opportunities to meet other Oregon Ducks who are living and working in the tri-state, Connecticut, Jersey, and here in the city, to begin to build those networks. So, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Oliver. So Anetra, a two-part question for you. So you joined the Black Alumni Network when the group was first starting out. So why did you decide to get involved early on and help the group grow? And then the second part of that, so affinity groups aren't regionally based, but they still offer community to UO graduates. So what does that community look like when it's you're connecting Ducks all over the world rather than just in one particular geographic region?
Yeah, so the group was founded in 2016 by a couple of Black alum who wanted to re-engage Black alum to the university. And so what was interesting is I actually was living in Eugene at the time, and there was a group of Black alum who were meeting in person for the first time to talk about the idea of a Black alumni network. The group hadn't officially launched yet. And so I just happened to be in the Ford Alumni Center and was connecting with those folks. And I knew one of the people who was a part of those meetings. And so what was really interesting to me is as I was like connecting with them and hearing their stories, we had about a 20-year difference from when we graduated, but our stories of our experiences at U of O were exactly the same. And those experiences that we were sharing were that like we were one of few Black people or people of color in our classes. And our connections with our Black student unions and Black Women of Achievement and these student organizations really were the safe spaces or our sense of community on campus. And so I remember feeling at the time like, it's amazing to me how 20 years later, we haven't made progress on this and Black students still don't feel as connected on campus. And it would be a shame if 20 years from now, that were still the case. And so that was really the driving factor for me. It was making sure that I can do any and everything that I can so that future Black students don't experience what I experienced. And it's not to say that I had a terrible experience at U of O. I actually had a pretty great experience, but there were some times where I felt, kind of othered or feeling like I just didn't have that sense of community. And so I'm really proud of how this group has grown and evolved. We actually held our first Black alumni reunion back in 2018. And a couple hundred Black alum came from all over the country, which was amazing because for a lot of them, it was their first time back on campus since they graduated. They had never really had a reason to come back. And so it was really cool just to show them how much the campus has changed and just to re-engage them and find a reason for them to be excited about the university. They were also really excited about the Black Cultural Center. And some of them were able to donate to get their names on the walls, which was super special. So I think not only is it just kind of a personal mission to me, I think it also is just connected to a lot of the work that I do at my job, but also outside of that in communities around social justice. So the cause of the Black Alumni Network is just really close to my heart, is honestly why I give my time there. But what makes that community look different is, I honestly think we were better equipped to deal with the world that we're in right now of COVID-19 and social distancing because a lot of our calls were already on Zoom or using these platforms to stay connected. And so it actually made the transition a little easier for us because we were already used to connecting with folks across the country. And so that was pretty smooth. I think that one of the things that we are still working on though is like, what does like regular engagement look like for these different alum all over the world? We're really good at kind of getting these splashy moments of like a reunion or a football game, but when it comes down to just kind of regular programming, that's something that we're still trying to navigate because we don't have the, the luxury of being in a physical space together. So it's something that we've started to get creative about just in terms of hosting virtual events. And I think that this pandemic that we're experiencing, although it is extremely tragic, the silver lining has been that it's forced us to kind of build our muscles around virtual engagement.
So this next question is for everyone again. What advice do you have for upcoming graduates on maintaining a healthy balance between professional life, social life, and volunteering like you all do?
This is not a joke. Google Calendar has changed my life, and I use it so much. And I didn't really use a calendar back in college, and I was like a mess, especially because science classes are just very intense, so many labs, and I was not organized. And I don't have a choice. Like, I had to be organized, right? You're working full time, you're trying to make commitments. I like to stay extremely busy. So it's kind of insane sometimes, like balancing all of it. And so Google Calendar, some type of system that you can create of how you're using your time. And then, if you're busy, if like you don't have the mental capacity to like do this thing. And so I just make sure that what I'm doing, I'm happy with. Like, I love being involved with the Portland chapter. It's not a chore. I love giving back. I love creating networks for people, helping people find, opportunities. Like, I do things that make me happy. I also really love my job, which I know is not always the case for everybody, but so it just kind of adds on to the fact that I don't feel like anything is like a have to. Like, I like going to work, I like volunteering, and I have a pretty big social life. Like, I enjoy traveling and hiking and all those things pre-COVID that we could all do together, and it was great. But if you don't have an equal balance, burnout is so easy and it is so real. And I definitely burned out when I first graduated and I first like started having a job, because I was trying to do it all. Like, I literally was trying to hang out with every single person possible, because I'm working this really boring 9 to 5, and you try and have this normal life balance. And it can be really hard. And so obtaining the skills to say no and know when to say no to people is very, very important. And it's one of the things that I've gotten really good at. Like, if I don't have time to hang out with someone, even if I want to, like, I know that it's just going to make me tired. Like, just say no, you can hang out another time. And especially now that I'm balancing like school full time and working full time, and the Portland chapter does a lot. So like, doing that, it's just really important to balance time for yourself as well. Like, it's very underrated how important it is to just do the things that make you happy, whether that's reading or like going outside for walks and things like that. So yeah.
Well, I think you nailed it, Ellie, by learning that skill, of which I think is something that you're always kind of learning to get better at, even as you go through your career. Learning to say no to a manager and to to someone a managerial responsibility in your organization. Certainly, kind of the fundamentals of being organized. And it is, you sprint out of Eugene and you're so excited, as I was and as you all are, and you want to do everything. And not to steal that phrase again from Ellie, but it's okay to play the long game. It's okay to not get involved in everything. September 1st, when you get that job, excited, and you roll into your first fall as a professional. I burned out too. I found myself a couple years removed from graduating University of Oregon, and found myself had just relocated to New York City, was traveling for work, and was volunteering for every initiative I could get my hands on internally within the firm. Was engaged with the New York Ducks, involved with a program called the Spanish Tutorial Program here in Spanish Harlem, which is a great organization. But found, in social life and trying to date and trying to meet people and enjoy the city. And I burned out really quick. And I ended up leaving that firm, and everything was fine. I was referred to another large accounting firm at Ernst & Young, and it was fine, but I definitely burned out. I look back on that point of my career. Maybe if I wouldn't have pivoted to that other firm, maybe things have, maybe I would have gotten involved in something else. But I think, it's okay to say no. And I made a comment a few minutes ago about, never getting outworked. But there's a really big difference between, work. You don't have to be there from, when the sun comes up to when the sun goes down, you have to work smart and work hard, and it's okay to strike that balance. I think a lot of managers, and even early on in your career, you can find yourself at a large firm or a smaller place, and you are kind of on the lowest of the priority list. It's okay for you to say, hey, look, every other Thursday, whatever, I need to dip out because I'm volunteering at 4 o'clock. It's okay to draw boundaries, and then you just make sure when your rear end is in your chair at work, you're working your tail off and you take your job serious. And to steal Ellie's phrase again, it's okay to say no. It's okay to strike that balance and have a life outside of work. I guess that's probably the best way I would answer that question, Erin.
Yeah, y'all put it beautifully. I definitely was thinking about the value of learning how to say no in my life. That's still something that I have not mastered, but I'm working on it because burnout is real. I know for me, I'm in an HR role and focusing on diversity and inclusion, and that itself is a pretty taxing career. And so it's really important for me to be able to do my best work, that I take that time for self-care and just to recharge. Another thing just to add that I've kind of been focusing on is, quality over quantity. And so in an effort to grind and, network a bunch and really try to grow and develop in my career, I used to take on and volunteer for everything, in the office, out of the office, volunteering, alumni, anything I could get involved in. I was very focused because my goal was trying to get my name out there and trying to establish myself. And while the grind, I think, paid off in those parts of my life because I was able to network and meet new people, I did experience some burnout of just, kind of being everywhere and not really being able to show up as my best self. And so a lot of what I've been focusing on now is really taking that time to negotiate with myself what's worth it and what's not, what are my goals, and how does each decision I make tie back to a goal in my life. And this is as simple as breakfast. I literally just negotiated with myself that I'm going to start eating smoothies for breakfast because I want to get more vegetables in my diet. So which sounds very methodical, but I've really been trying to kind of bring in this practice of negotiating things in my life so that I can prioritize the steps that I need to take to reach the different goals that I've set for myself. And so I found that that's helped me make better decisions about how to use my time in my professional life and in my personal life. At work, I think in a lot of entry-level roles, you don't have sometimes a lot of say in what projects you're on, or sometimes you don't have a lot of decisions on what your day looks like. But you can be strategic and thoughtful about, which additional projects you're adding on to your plate and making sure that they're in alignment with what your career goals are or a specific skill set that you're trying to build. And I think when you're focused on a goal, it makes it a lot clearer for you to kind of focus in, and you don't experience burnout in the same way you do when you're just kind of everywhere and doing things without a core reason, if that makes sense. So I think just that was a long-winded way of saying that, kind of be singular focused and have goals, and know that if things don't align to your goals, it's totally okay to say no. And that's a part of you establishing boundaries for yourself.
So this last question that we prepared is for everybody as well. You've given a lot of wonderful advice, but if we had to ask you and you had to say what your best piece of advice for ducks who are graduating this year in 2020, what would it be?
So first I would like to say that it is going to be extremely weird when you are not in this grind of school, because you've been very used to that for the 4 years. However, there are so many new opportunities to look forward to. And just because it's a different atmosphere doesn't mean it's not going to be just as amazing. But my best piece of advice is to try and get involved in something that you find joy in. I would personally, for me, I wanted to stay connected with U of O. So I looked into the Alumni Association. So personally, that's my advice. I feel like it's a really easy, you're connected with people on this level of we all went to U of O. we have the similar likes, and it's really easy to connect with people immediately when you have something that's so easily talked about. I mean, I remember literally talking about Rennies with someone who I'm now friends with and have been friends with from an event back in 2013. So like I just, that's my biggest piece of advice. The U of O has tons of stuff that they're doing. There's stuff everywhere. We've had board members go to other states and join up for watch parties. We've also had people, somebody just joined our board who used to be the watch party chair for LA Ducks. So it's just so easy to stay involved by kind of looking at what the U of O has to offer, because they're still doing a lot, and it's just really easy guidance to kind of facilitate what you want to do by just keeping that little piece.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great question. You know, stating the obvious here, we find ourselves in this one in 100-year storm, if not even greater, in terms of the economic fallout of the coronavirus. So the advice that I would give, and I do feel like I actually, you know, extending beyond having some sympathy or actually having some empathy. You know, when I was an early on in my career, literally 24 months removed from walking in Eugene to get my degree, 2008, 2009 happened, and the financial markets eviscerated overnight. And getting a job and advancing from that first job that I did get was tremendously difficult, and there was a lot of anxiety there. And so, you know, I want to be pragmatic in my advice here, and I'm gonna, you know, keep this short and sweet. Is, you know, be open to other opportunities that maybe not right now are on your radar. So I went to the East Coast, dead set. I was going to law school. That's what I was going to do. I was going to go to law school in the short term, you know, work for an NGO, maybe go work on the Hill. And some, you know, some realities kind of struck, being a kid who grew up in Eugene, Oregon. And I was so excited and was, you know, so grateful to be there that I kind of kept an open mind. Did I want to work at a brick and mortar branch for the rest of my life? No, but I was playing the long game, and I knew there was some of this financial crime, anti-money laundering ammo. I really didn't know much about it, but I knew within the private sector that banks kind of did that. So I kind of began to kind of build my network and shoot these emails into this dark hole that, you know, I don't know if anyone's going to respond to, and it worked. So I guess I will kind of land the plane on that question by keep an open mind. You know, the last thing I'll say is Ellie was spot on. Leverage the network. If you find yourself in Chicago, if you find yourself in Los Angeles, you find yourself in Gresham, leverage the University of Oregon network. Alumni will drop what they are doing to help you. And that's, you know, I really can't emphasize that fact enough. You know, here in New York City, you'd be surprised, we get a number of emails every month from alumni are curious. Maybe they're sitting in Portland, or maybe they're sitting in a different part of the country, and they're thinking about a job, or they're, you know, curious logistically, how the heck do you move to Brooklyn? How do I do that? Leverage your network, or, you know, Eugene is a special place. The University of Oregon is a special place. So I'll stop there and pass it off.
That's good advice. Y'all stole my take. If I could add, I guess, something new outside of those two pieces, I would just add that I think it's really important to, like they mentioned, leverage your network, especially during this time, I think, where there's a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people and some anxieties about, you know, landing your next role and, you know, your dream role, and if those opportunities are available. I've been so amazed just to see on my LinkedIn networks how willing people are to help. And especially this time has really made me realize the strength in the Oregon brand, and that by being an Oregon grad, it gives you access in the same way that someone from these other, you know, institutions that I just won't mention them because they don't matter. You know, the same sort of credibility that historically other institutions have. And I think it's the work of all the students and alumni just over the years really strengthening our brand and our network, that you virtually can go anywhere in the United States and connect with an Oregon Duck that's willing to help you and make a connection or a referral without a question. And so I think feel confident in that, and knowing that you have a strong network behind you that's willing to support you and help you however they can. And so you have to put yourself out there. And putting yourself out there may mean that you're cold, you know, DMing someone on LinkedIn and just saying, hey, like, you know, looking at your profile, you have a really interesting career path. Like, I would love to learn more. And coffee chats are amazing. I've been doing a couple of virtual coffee chats, which are awesome. You don't even have to leave your home. Like, networking is getting so much easier now. So, I mean, take advantage of that and this downtime that we have. I mean, a lot of folks are working from home and, you know, having reduced schedules or just a little more free time. And so people do have an extra, you know, 30 minutes in the morning when they're drinking coffee to hop on a call with you. So just try. And, you know, the worst that can happen is that you don't get a response or someone says no, but that's okay if that does happen, because there's plenty of other people that are willing to connect with you. So be encouraged by that, and please just put yourself out there and try to connect with folks. Every time I've done it, people have always accepted my request with open arms and at least been willing to meet with me for 30 minutes, and it's been super fruitful.
Right, so we can now take some questions from the audience. So again, please feel free to type them in the Zoom chat box. We'll answer as many as we can. If we don't get to some questions, we'll follow up via email, whether it's something that the Alumni Association can answer or we can also share with our panelists. So first one we have in from a student on, it's a job search related question, and they asked, do you think that it's more important to focus on the quantity of jobs applied for, or to focus on strong networking relationships with people and companies, excuse me. I'm interested in companies that I'm interested in during this hiring freeze. So whoever wants to jump in and take that one.
I can take that first part of the question, and thanks for the question. That's good. It's thoughtful. I would rephrase rephrase your question to take, so this job that you're interested in, or plural, these jobs you're interested in, take your resume and kind of go through the bullets of what is, what are the responsibilities that you would be doing in this job. And then below that will be the requirements of what they're looking for, the bare minimum requirements. And also don't forget, when you're looking at these jobs and they have requirements, this is their shopping list. This is like the ideal candidate. So there might be 7 bullets on there, and maybe you hit 4 of them. Go ahead and apply. And in your resume, I personally, I've never had just one resume that I kind of fire out if I am seeking to make a job. You have a tailored resume for each and every single job that you're looking to apply for. So I would tailor your job experience to what they're asking for. Spend some time wordsmithing that, and maybe get a friend or a roommate or a parent or a sibling to kind of look at it and get a second set of eyes. So that's how I answer that first part of the question.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, job searching could be a full-time job in itself, just really outlining, all the different elements of preparing your application materials as well as the networking component. So I would say to answer that question is really just based on where you're at for those different processes. And so if you're applying for a role in an industry where you're already really connected and you know a lot of folks, then maybe you could spend some time starting to cultivate some of those relationships and letting those folks know that, like, hey, I'm in the market, I'm interested in this specific role, and starting to cultivate that relationship. I think if you are looking for a job in an industry where maybe you aren't as plugged in just yet, you could start by doing some research to see if there are currently Duck alum in that industry on LinkedIn that you could connect with and start to have those conversations. I think it's so hard to answer that with a specific answer, because I do think it's a case-by-case basis. But to speak on the hiring freeze piece, the reality is like multiple companies are experiencing hiring freezes, and a lot of them are looking at their budgets now and trying to prioritize, like, what are their kind of essential roles that they need to fill, and what roles can they maybe push out to the next year, or maybe they don't need, or they can absorb within the company. And so I would say that if you see a headline that says that a particular company is doing a hiring freeze, or maybe you talk to a recruiter that told you that, keep an open mind and know that they may, after they go through their budgeting exercises internally and reprioritize their resources, they might still be hiring for those roles. And so don't take that headline as a, an X, and that there's no chance, because opportunities do open up. And most of the time, as people are still, kind of transitioning in and out of companies, they're able to still hire. So while you may see that there's hiring freezes or potentially layoffs, some of these companies actually are still hiring based on where they need to fill their critical roles. So keep that in mind as well. And the last piece I would say is there are some industries that are actually doing pretty well in the pandemic. And so that's actually some interesting research that, if you have some extra time, maybe considering looking into what are some of the industries that are actually doing well and are hiring at their normal capacity, and maybe lean into some of those opportunities.
The only thing I would add is, even though I said I applied to 50 jobs, that was over the span of like 6 months, like 5-6 months. So it wasn't like one weekend I just applied to 50 just because I wanted to apply to a bunch. I think you can do both things. I think you can apply to a bunch if you need to. Like, I just kept not getting jobs, so that's why I kept applying. But I also think you can also access networking. I think both are very valuable. Just don't feel discouraged because the job market is hard. I also will be graduating from my MBA program in October, and will be seeking a new job, was my plan. And so I know that I'm going to have to apply to a lot, because the job market's going to be extremely weird now, post-pandemic, or whenever post-pandemic even means. But and so yeah, just know, like, if you don't get something, keep applying, talk to people, figure it out. It's the best advice. It's kind of hard to do a cut and dry thing with that, because it's tricky.
So another question related to resumes. When you're applying to a job and you can only show who you are through a resume or cover letter, how do you represent your soft skills?
You need to boil the ocean down to 3 bullet points, and I know that's very difficult. I am not in HR, but I feel like I've had some experience in doing this. It's very difficult. These jobs are going to see a lot of applications, and your technical competencies may align with what they're asking, but there might be, a dozen other applicants that have that as well. So it's, again, and I don't know if my response here is too narrow, but it's looking how, they want to know, how can you help them? How can you add value to that organization, whether it be small, medium, or a transnational firm? So again, go to what they're asking to, what responsibilities and what requirements they have. Anetra made a really good point. Do some history. Look up the history of the firm. And it might be a smaller regional organization, or again, it could be a global organization, but it does not hurt to put in a 1 sentence in your paragraph in that cover letter, or maybe stretch that to 2 paragraphs, as difficult as that is, why you'd be excited to work for that firm, and show and indicate and demonstrate that you've done some research, because not every candidate does, and it kind of shows some good qualities about you. So that's how I would answer that.
So a trick that I've done is that on my resume, I have an objective like paragraph at the top, and it's just 3 sentences, and I'm very specific on like what I'm going to bring to you, like what skill set, what personality traits, what am I bringing to you that is why you should hire me. And I will look at the job. Not all jobs want cover letters, and you're not supposed to usually provide more than you're supposed to, but I will look at the job I'm hiring at and kind of see like what major skills are they asking for. In addition, that I always follow up. Like if I haven't heard back from a job, I will always follow up, and I will say like, I'm very interested in this job. I just wanted to know where you are at in the hiring process, if you've already chosen someone. A, I just want to know if I didn't get hired or not. B, the job I'm at now, I never heard back, and I emailed HR, and then they never got back to me. And so I went on the website for Pacific Psychology and emailed the director of the clinic, and it turned out that HR had never given my application to them, and they had been looking for somebody for months. And I got hired. So if it's something that you want, it might take a little bit extra, but it's really important. It kind of goes to show like you're really interested, you just kind of want to know. So yeah.
Yeah, and if I could add really quickly, I would say that I think your soft skills are evaluated after you submit your resume. And so I've experienced that a lot of places or a lot of companies aren't asking for cover letters as much as they used to. That was my experience when I was moving from the nonprofit to now in tech. All of the places I applied to didn't even ask for cover letters. And so I think knowing that these companies have varying ways on how they screen applicants, it's really important to focus in on the hard technical skills to make sure that your resume is reflective enough of those skills to show that you're qualified for the role. I think that's kind of the first priority, and the primary purpose of your resume is just that at a glance, a recruiter can scan at your resume and say, yep, this person can do the job, or I feel confident that they can do it. And then from that point on, after that establishment has been set that we know this person can do the job, I think you'll start to have phone screens and you'll come on site for interviews. And that's where they're evaluating your soft skills or your interpersonal skills. And so I would say just really focus in on making sure your technical skills are, as clear as possible, and that it's in alignment with what the job description is asking. And then from there, once you have the opportunity to talk to folks, they'll be able to learn more about you and, learn more about your strong interpersonal skills.
So we have time for one more question. Just a reminder, we will answer all questions via email if there's more that come in. But also I'll just really quickly plug that we have the second part of this taking flight is next Wednesday, May 20th, and you'll have a chance to chat one-on-one with alumni and can bring a lot of questions to that event as well. But so the last question from a student is about chapters and affinity groups. In your experience, what seems to be the common age makeup of the alumni groups? Is it mostly recent grads, or does it span all different ages?
I can answer that one. So Portland is really special. We have like everybody here. So it just depends on the event too. So I would say the science nights, events that we have draw a very older population of people, but we've started seeing like a lot more younger people going out. That also could be like people, I just really love science, but a lot of people don't. So it could also just be like something like that. But it's just like, it's all over the board. I mean, we do watch parties and we have like 150 people out, and it's just so varied on the age range, which is most of our events, to be honest, that we hold. There's always somebody, if you're worried about kind of who can I connect with, like, can I connect with a recent grad at this event, or is it just going to be people who are much older and, can't connect with the same experience? It's not going to happen. The board that I am currently on, there's such a range of people. I would say most of the people are probably in their late 20s, early 30s, but we have people who are like graduated like 20 years ago. So it's a lot. It's very open in Portland.
Yeah, just real quick, New York City, Washington, D.C. Runs the gamut. I don't want to put a number on there, but it really, and I made this comment a few minutes ago. I was quite surprised here in New York. The last number, of course, during the football watch party season, we see a lot of Ducks, but a number of other events that we had, a lot of 2019, 2018, 17 grads, but it really does run, it's varied. We had a signature event here in Manhattan, the first one the New York City Ducks had, and we had graduates from the 70s and the 80s attend. We do a volunteering event in West Village, and we get Ducks that frankly I've never met, didn't even know that were involved, that were in the chapter, that show up, that are all different ages. So it really does run. And my experience in DC, when I showed up, there were lots of new grads. So perhaps if there's some hesitation about being the only new duck, that's certainly not the case.
Yeah, plus one to that, with it being a mixed crowd. Something to consider too is that a lot of times people are joining these alumni chapters for different reasons. And so some people are joining because they want to network, they're new in their career and want to just meet new people. There's others who want to give back or they miss the university. And so maybe they've been disconnected for a couple of years and now, being a part of the chapter or an affinity group is an opportunity for them to reconnect. And so people are showing up for different reasons. And because of that, you'll meet a variety of different people from all backgrounds and at different stages professionally.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, Ellie, Oliver, Anetra, for all this wonderful advice. Please join the Taking Flight live chat next Wednesday, May 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. It'll be a chance to chat one-on-one with alumni living in a city that you will hopefully be moving to after graduation or plan to move to after graduation. And you can register online at ualumni.com/takingflight. Thanks everyone for joining and hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.